dog whining? Okay, good.
No.
Good. That's okay. Excellent. Well, welcome all. I'm Julie Hulbert. I'm one of the commissioners here at the Cannabis Control Board. Just a few table setting items as we get started. This is a social equity and economic empowerment peer networking event. Typically, the style of these events has been that we have an esteemed panel of speakers, and I will introduce some of those folks in a minute. And they share on a topic, and then which tonight is positive impact criteria, which is 1.4.9 in our rules. And then we'll open it up to questions. And we do leave the chat open. Nellie, that's right. We have the chat open during this meeting. Yeah, so folks can connect and network with each other in that way while we are chatting. So tonight we have with us Miriam, who's the owner of the Tea House in White River Junction. And then we also have Ray and Melissa and a host of other folks from our CCB team to talk about what it looks like. So we'll have Miriam talk about what it was like for her to develop her positive impact criteria and what it's been like to implement it in the last year. And then we'll have folks from our CCB team talk about what that looks like for the application and renewal process. So just to kind of kick off this hour-long conversation, I'll just briefly review what the positive impact criteria is. I think everyone will remember that our mission as a board is to safely, equitably, and effectively implement and administer the laws enabling adult and medical use cannabis in Vermont. So further, from our read of the enabling legislation, we believe that the legislature intended the board to make equity and sustainability a real priority in the policymaking. So in our work, creating the rules, the board identified some best practices that support both an inclusive and sustainable industry. And that work is reflected in the 1.4.9 rule. And that rule essentially states that any cannabis establishment, any applicant rather, that's not a testing lab and is not a sole proprietorship must develop business plans relating to creating positive impact for the community by incorporating both sustainability and equity-based principles into the business. The rule provides a menu of options for this, and I won't go through that menu of options tonight, but what I will share is that just to be specific in how this kind of works, an applicant that plans to hire between 2 and 10 employees has to choose one inclusive practice and one sustainable practice and make a plan for each. And then an applicant that plans to hire more than 10 must choose 3 inclusive practices and 3 sustainable practices and make a plan for each. And then at renewal time, they need to update on how those plans worked and where those plans are going. So now that I've sort of framed that, Miriam, would you kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your business, and then like the process that you went through in developing your positive impact criteria plan and what that's been like?
Sure. So my name is Miriam Wood. I'm the owner of the Tea House, which is located in White River Junction. We opened our doors for business on December 23rd. So it's been amazing. We've learned a lot, and we have a great team. As I wrote our whole application, the positive impact criteria was a little daunting at first because it's so open-ended and there's so many kind of different directions I think that people can go with this. Unlike, say security, it's standard. You need cameras here, you need cameras there. But the positive impact criteria leaves a lot of room for creativity and imagination. So it was overwhelming too. So I think the first thing I did was really look at what our goals were. My goal was really to contribute to the community and to the cannabis industry in Vermont, and I wanted to really think about how I could do that. And I realized the first thing that I wanted to do was to create careers and not, just a job. Not to get too philosophical, but I would define the difference as a job being what you do for work, whereas a career isn't just something that pays you, but also supports your personal goals and ambitions. So I really wanted people that were inspired to work in the cannabis industry, and I wanted to help them get there if they weren't already there. my other goal was to have a diverse representation within our employee pool, to address the low number of underrepresented populations in the cannabis industry, and reverse the trend of there being so many barriers to people. Our goal was to have over 50% of our employees be a combination of women, people from the BIPOC community, people with disabilities, and veterans. I'm proud to say as of today, we are at 77%. And our employee pool is 55% from the BIPOC community. We also believe the importance of living wages. And, that's a difficult one because as we're all kind of, starting these applications, many of us don't have a lot of funds, and it's hard to know where to kind of cut corners and where to put all of our money, but paying living wages is really important. So we made we made a plan that we were going to pay all of our employees 20% greater than the cost of living for the county of Windsor, which was calculated using MIT's living wage calculator. That was recommended to me from someone from out of state who had also used that calculator. So it's really important, I think, to make sure that we have livable wages. We also offer health insurance, and our employees do have access to a 401k. With regards to supporting an incubator or accelerator programs, I really wasn't sure how I could fit in my knowledge into this, and the closest that I could do was mentorship from an expert. I certainly don't consider myself an expert, but I've made myself available to the public and for others that do want to enter into the cannabis industry. We have a collection of books at the Tea House. I've let people borrow them. Sometimes people come in when they're shopping, they'll sit down and read it so that they have access to, a library of books on cannabis. And I'm also helping a girl, a woman who will be applying as a social equity applicant. She's currently still working on her pitch deck, but I kind of went through her finances tooth and comb and gave back my feedback just from, being having already done that and what to expect in terms of, that's, you're going to need a lot more than that for inventory, or you're going to need less of that for security. So I think it's really important to just give my time to the best that I can and to use my knowledge that I have so far to try and help others. I would also say the Cannabis Business Development Fund was established to help social equity applicants. I know everyone's already paying a lot of money for, there's fees here and there. And so in one sense, it is one more thing to donate towards or pay, but I will also be contributing $500 a year to the Cannabis Development Fund. The fund is there to provide low interest rate and loans to social equity applicants to help them pay for ordinary or necessary business expenses. It can be used for outreach to support social equity applicants, to assist with job training and technical assistance, and some other, there's a few different categories. So I think that fund's really important, and if everyone, just contributes a little bit to it, it could certainly help some people in Vermont. And so implementing it, I would say everything has gone pretty smoothly. We've got a really great staff. I've found myself using a little more maybe humanity and humility than I have in my past jobs. One gentleman who was interested in working in a dispensary, he was an African-American male, and I asked him to send me his resume, and he told me he didn't have one. And at first I was a little caught off guard by that. And I think, maybe Miriam in my prior world, in the kind of corporate world, would have, just said, well, I'm sorry, but so I offered to help him write his resume. I said, I really need one, but I extended that to help him. And I think in the cannabis industry, that's really what we have to do. We have to do things that we wouldn't normally do And we need to help people. We need to help people if we're going to break down the barriers that have been. So that's what I did, and it feels good. I feel good. My employees are really happy and thriving, and it's been amazing. So I think everyone that's working on their positive impact criteria, once you figure out exactly what works for you, and I think you'll see that it's really going to help you in the long run, and possibly in more ways than you picture now.
That's all great. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that there were, challenges in sort of setting up the business and doing the positive impact criteria at the same time. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you know, um, the livable wage in particular made me think, that can also be a real recruitment and retention tool. And you talked about your staff feeling satisfied. Can you talk a little bit more about that, like what it was like for, or what it might be like for your staff and for recruitment and retention having a livable wage?
I'd have to say the majority of my staff are really thrilled with their starting wage. I think it's probably the most that most of them have made before on an hourly rate. And I really had to work to make that happen. I didn't have that much money to start this, and I did have to make other cuts. We did buy some used furniture for the tea house, and I didn't buy, there was this really beautiful leather chair that I wanted for my office, but it was expensive. And I was like, well, I don't really need it. So I did a lot of cuts, and even our display cases, I didn't go with the first ones that I wanted, because I just kept thinking in my head that money, can be saved to go towards other things. So I think if people make it a priority, they can do it. It's just, you have to, if you have X amount of money, you just have to trim it from somewhere else. But as you said, employee retention, it is expensive to hire employees. There's the training program, and other expenses that go into it. And overall, the cannabis industry, there is a high turnover rate in bud tenders. I know right now in Vermont it's a little bit exciting, it's new, but it's not going to be new forever. And it's really important for me to get quality employees that are going to stay, that are creating careers that I can trust, that aren't theft is another big issue within the cannabis industry, both of cash and cannabis. So I think the happier my employees are, it's a win-win for everybody. And my employees work really, really hard, and I appreciate them and value them, and I let them know every day. And it's not, it doesn't come down to just money. There's other ways to value your employees, but I want them to also have a nice life. And, in order to do that, they have to have a livable wage.
That's great. And then, so, livable wage, or deciding to put that into place, that has a business cost, but the mentorship doesn't have a cost to it, right? Other than your sort of time and energy. Or does there, is there a cost to that, or is it time and energy? And, the philosophy of that for some might be, well, if I mentor someone, then I'm mentoring my competition. So can you talk a little bit about, at the same time, though, you said we have to do things differently in the cannabis industry, and I completely agree. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that experience.
Sure. No, I mean, I certainly don't charge for anything. I went out to lunch with one person. I've had other people just set up times to come in my office. It does take time, but it's important. And I think, it's just what we need to do. Yes, is it technically your competition? In one sense, yes, it can be looked at that. But, I think there's room in the Vermont market for all of us. And, and it feels good to help someone. I have a rare, and other people that are already licensed. This is something just coming out of prohibition that Vermont has just started. I have a rare inside view that a lot of people don't have yet. And so I think to kind of hide that, or to not help because of a fear of a competition, that's just not the right answer.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Thank you. It sounds like there's some great stuff happening at the tea house.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I haven't been to your spot yet, but I will when I get down to
I'd love that. Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah. If you could hang out for a minute, because I'm sure there will be questions later.
Sure.
Ray, maybe you could talk a little bit about, well, I don't know if you have slides to present. It looks like maybe you do. If you want to talk about what the team looks for, and what you've prepared.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Outstanding. So as you go forward for renewals, we will be imposing positive impact criteria on your license renewals, and they start with small business operators, and in the same conditions that we apply to small operators will be applied to big operators. So for renewal, all licenses must include information regarding progress on their licensee's required goals under the section of 1.4.9. Depending on the number of the people in your business, you'll need to develop those impact goals and report that progress to us as we assess your renewal. Our first year goals for licensees who've reported having or had plans to have more than 2 employees on their initial application are required to update the board in their renewal process by providing a narrative on those impact goals. And in year 2, licensees who have reported or plan to have 2 or more employees on the renewal application are required to complete a positive impacts criteria as outlined later in this presentation. And we will be looking at a comprehensive set of criteria along the matrix that you see in front of you. I can go over them, but I really want to emphasize that we need to be committed towards cultivating this community, the regulated community, beyond what many of the business owners have in their work experience, because it's a completely different realm. Yes, you might have had great success in the corporate arena, but you're entering retail now and into a previously prohibited space. So we're really drilling down on our statutory mandate for social equity. So how diverse is your workforce? And not, Vermont diverse, but actual diverse. Did your hiring practices create a diverse and inclusive environment? What is the current makeup of your workforce? These kind of introspective questions that you ought to be asking yourselves. Are you meeting your hiring needs? What assistance do you need from us to help you reach your hiring needs? Are you creating a safe and inclusive environment where respect is your language? What sort of barriers you're experiencing to help execute your plan? Again, do you need assistance to help execute your plan? We're not going to be the ones to actually make that plan for you, but we know resources and we can point you in the right direction. And having Miriam discuss some of her successes as part of that plan. How do you plan to capitalize on the variety of experiences on your workforce? And does your business utilize matrices? Tracking, reporting, these are all the things we want to see. And going on to the other elements that we're going to be assessing, are your workforce reentry programs. How many have you hired under workforce reentry? Who are you going to find prospective employees who may be formerly incarcerated individuals? What are your criteria for participating in the program? So building out an infrastructure to help realize your positive social impact criteria. Assess your barriers. Show us your documentation. I think our bullets speak for themselves. Now, in our assessment of your comprehensive report on your plan and your goals for the future. These plans are complicated, but you take them little by little, you'll be able to execute. Did you start an incubator program in year one? Are there businesses or licenses that are participating in this program so far? And what are they doing? And did you describe any network opportunities that you're providing? How does your incubator program have a positive impact towards promoting sustainable practices of socially and economically reparative practices in the cannabis industry? Again, going back to what the barriers you experience and what benchmarks you are using to measure your success. Because the more that we know that you've assessed the problem, the more that we can share knowledge throughout the rest of the regulated community. As an agency, we'll look for more comprehensive reports on your plan and your goals for the future. This is for enviro and agricultural practices. We've seen a number of really, really phenomenal setups. And then we've seen folks doing the best that they can with what resources they have. So this is an effort to reach perfection, not necessarily be perfect from the start. What sort of sustainable agricultural practices are you implementing this year? Did you conduct soil tests to better understand your nutrient content? Do you use plastic mulch or rock wool? If so, what's your plan to move away from these soil media? Do you have an integrated pest management plan in place? Describe your farm plan, whether and how it incorporates principles of environmental protection and habitat preservation. What state, local, and national resources are you engaging with, and how are you benefiting from those connections? I want to take a special emphasis right here and really highlight the kind of work that you can get done with Efficiency Vermont. There's a lot you can do from it. What measures are you implementing to reduce environmental harm in your business operations? And how are you tracking your agricultural practices year to year? Are you documenting? Do you have your journal going? Like these are low-tech, very simple ways to check your business progress. And are you networking with other growers, manufacturers, and retailers? Sharing best practices is always a smart way to reduce cost and make your businesses more efficient. Going to waste and efficiency standards, we'll be looking for a comprehensive report on your plan and goals for the future. I mentioned this earlier, and I can't stress it enough. Efficiency Vermont is a gold mine. Are you working with them? Are you achieving energy efficiency? Have you provided tracking data about your energy use over the last year, and how do you plan to reduce your energy over time? Are you using alternative energy sources, or do you plan to incorporate them into the future? Does your business burn fossil fuels? If so, do you have a plan to move away from fossil fuels or use carbon offsets? And what sort of local, state, and national organizations are you working with to achieve your goals? How many years will it take? And how are you tracking your progress? Again, we want to know how you are attacking this problem. So for small businesses with 2 to 10 employees, you'll need to provide information regarding proposed plans to recruit, hire, and implement a development ladder for minorities, women, or individuals who have historically been disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition, using at least one of the following: inclusive hiring and contracting plans, a plan for providing a livable wage, adopting and supporting incubator or accelerator programs that seek to assist businesses that meet the definition of social equity applicant or are minority or woman-owned, including but not limited to grants or access to capital, workforce reentry training or programming, cultivation, manufacturing, or retail space, management training, or other forms of industry-specific technical training or mentorship from experts. And a contribution or contributions to the Cannabis Business Development Fund established under Section 987. We want to see what you're doing. We want to see what kind of good work you're doing and how well you're tracking your work. And to keep moving on it, we want you to provide information regarding proposed plans to incorporate principles of environmental resiliency or sustainability, including energy efficiency, using at least one of the following options: sustainable agricultural practices, sourcing energy from renewables, exceeding minimum waste standards as provided under Rule 2.2.8, or exceeding minimum efficiency standards as provided under Rule 2.5. if applicable, and contribute to anti-pollution efforts, which could include, but is not limited to, the use of carbon offsets. And in the question and answer section, we'll help clarify what some of these options are. Now, for larger cannabis operators with 10 or more employees, your commitment to positive impacts is going to grow as you are presumably better suited to achieve some of these goals. And we'll need you to provide information regarding proposed plans to recruit, hire, and implement a development ladder for minorities, women, or individuals who have historically been disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition, with at least 3 of the following: inclusive hiring and contracting plans, a plan for providing a livable wage, adopting and supporting incubator or accelerator programs that seek to assist businesses that meet the definition of social equity applicant or are minority or women-owned, including but not limited to providing grants to or access to capital, workforce reentry training or programming, cultivation, manufacturing, or retail space, management training, or other forms of industry-specific technical training or mentorship from experts, and a contribution or contributions to the Cannabis Business Development Fund. And for the environmental and agricultural practices side of it, we're going to be looking for sustainability, including energy efficiency, for at least 3 of the following options: your sustainable agricultural practices, your sourcing energy from renewables, exceeding your minimum waste standards or exceeding your minimum efficiency standards, and contributions to anti-pollution efforts. I think that's right back to you, Julie.
All right. Thanks, Ray. So I wonder if you could just talk a bit about like what, and maybe, I know we've got lots of our folks from the team here. But so for folks who've never set goals before or, are just starting a business, how extensive does the licensing team require their plan to be when they first submit their application? Like, does it have to be pages and pages? I think what we'd like to see is that people have thought this through. Is that about what you would say?
Yeah, we want a thoughtful and considered plan. Some applicants have gone with a very terse and brief statement of what their positive social impact plans are going to be. And here is our chance in renewal to assess the weight and credibility of that initial statement. Because the more vague it was for year 0, the more concrete we want to see efforts to have realized those statements that those plans you've represented to us that you're going to make.
Yeah. And then in some cases, and I've thought about this a little bit, there might be a scenario where someone set a positive impact criteria and they couldn't meet it. Like, let's say that they had hoped to contribute to the Cannabis Business Loan Fund, but they operated at a loss, and they just simply can't. Has our team thought about like what we'll look for in renewal for people to kind of demonstrate, like, this is why I didn't meet my plan. And we may not have created this yet. I'm just wondering I think what I'm trying to convey in general is that if someone did not meet their positive impact criteria, it doesn't necessarily mean their license won't be renewed, right? Like, all hope is not lost. I think that's what I'm trying to convey. Like, might be scenarios in which somebody could not, like they operated at a loss and they couldn't contribute, or maybe they had to pick something else.
Which is why I think we have such a comprehensive plan for businesses to realize one of the 5 options. If it's not making a contribution to the fund, it's making a show of having made strides towards sustainable farming practices and having tried to cultivate a mentorship program within their staff, or having made the effort to assist with reentry programs. There are 101 ways to realize our positive social impact criteria. And if no effort has been made, well, then we are going to handle that material as if no effort has been made. But if you represent to us that you're making efforts towards realizing a positive social impact criteria, we will assess it as such.
Thank you. I think that's very, very helpful for folks. Just quickly, before I turn to questions, I thought maybe I would talk just briefly about goal setting in general, because as it occurs to me that, this really is about, setting goals. And so folks who are maybe doing this for the first time, or, maybe had a briefer submission in year 1 and need to sort of demonstrate what they're working on for year 2. So I'm going to try and share my screen. And I might need Nellie's help for this. See if I can get the right. Can you all see the slide that says Smarty goal setting?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just in terms of just briefly talking about one tool, and there's lots out there, you can Google many, but if you're looking to figure out, okay, I have this broad set of goals. How do I sort of narrow this down? Kind of going back to what Miriam was talking about in the beginning. This is one way to look at it, is the Smarty goal setting tool. So being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable in terms of the thought around goals. So if you're looking at setting a specific goal, you would kind of look at the 1.4.9 criteria, decide which one, and then create, a specific thought for yourself, or a specific plan for yourself. This is the goal I intend to set. So if it's doing a livable wage, that's pretty specific, right? Measurable in that particular sense is also measurable. We have lots of tools out there. Miriam talked about the MIT tool. There are the state of Vermont, the Department of Labor has a similar tool. So you could look at that as, that's the measure for what livable wage is. Then you'd want to look at your budget. Is it achievable? Is it something that you can achieve? Is it relevant to the goal setting that we're doing for this part of the rule? Yes. And then the time frame in which you're going to be able to achieve that goal. And then looking at inclusivity and being equitable in terms of how does that impact the group of folks that you're looking to impact, in this case, your employees. So I just wanted to kind of briefly introduce, one type of goal setting thought process for folks who are unfamiliar with having to do this. Again, you can look this up, and there are all kinds of YouTube videos and books about this that can help people set goals. I would say it's not just a good tool for setting your 1.4.9 criteria, but it's a good tool for just any type of goal setting that you want to do. So I thought I would just briefly share that while we are talking. And then we've kind of thrown a lot of information out of folks, and I'm wondering if there are questions. I don't see any questions. Nellie, do we have positive impact criteria guidance? I can't, I was just about to go to the website and I cannot, I know that we have talked about it. Is that? Okay. So I think I'd open this up to the rest of our team as well, or to Miriam if you have other things that you want to share about positive impact criteria. Nellie, if you've got, oh, yeah, go right ahead. So we talked about sort of the SMART goal setting, the MOCA project planning, and something in the MOCA that you talked about in the helper and the cascading goals is another piece. You know, when people are doing their 1.4.9 criteria or just in planning their business in general, considering those cascading goals and how it can be used to develop the employee into new roles in their organization is another piece. So all of these goals and management tools can be used to develop your staff and really make them, you could be best in class with your staff with those types of cascading goals. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to check in one more time and see if there are questions out there or if our staff team has anything else that they want to add, or Miriam, if there's anything else you wanted to add kind of in the last 10 minutes. This is a quiet one, I think. So, if there aren't any questions, maybe we'll give back everyone 10 minutes of their time because I feel like we've covered a lot in the last 50 minutes or so between, go ahead, Miriam.
Sorry, I'm coming back. It's just taking me a minute.
Sure.
Because my computer's being slow. I did want to share about maybe 3 years ago, I was doing an online cannabis course, and I was watching this video, and I forget the woman's name, but something she said really stuck out to me. And she said that social equity is the moral compass for the cannabis industry. And that sentence has always really stayed in my head. And so I think as when I was doing my positive impact criteria, that sentence was kind of at the forefront of my head. And I think it's a really cool quote. I think it's true. And I just wanted to share that as well.
And I'm glad that you did, because that is a perfect place to end. That cannabis is equity is the moral compass of the cannabis industry is an excellent place to leave off at. So thanks all for participating tonight. Nellie, do you have any closing administrative things that we need to cover before we all log off? Oh, you're muted. Great. And if folks are looking for the 1.4.9 criteria, you can find that under the laws, rules, and regulations portion of our page, our webpage. Great. Thanks all. Thank you, Miriam, for sharing your story. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you guys do as well.
Thank you. Thanks, team. I will see you again soon. Bye.